All right. So greetings. This is Beautiful Mind. This question comes in on assistance with the way that this comes from Pearson, my math lab, and a question comes in on how they made a chart to kind of answer this question. So the idea is that this is an exponential function, right? And so there are three key numbers that you can plot that kind of help to see to get a sense of what exponential you're talking about. Basically, when x is -1, 0, or 1. And that'll give you the general shape. That'll kind of guide you into what the general shape of the exponential is. So if you plot when x is -1, 0, and 1, typically, then, provided you're not moving left or right or anything, it'll give you a sense of which one they're talking about. So the way Pearson suggested to solve this one was to make a table. So then, like, if we did, let x be, let me do like a paper like this. So then let x be -1, 0, and 1. So then you're going to plot these x values against all of these different y's and then see which one matches the graph. So, like, for instance, if we're doing A, where y equals, we'll say y equals 5 to the power of x, where this is A, then B is y equals 5 to the negative x. This is B. C is y equals -5 to the x. A, B, C, D, y equals -5 to the negative x. That's D. C, D, E. Y equals 5 to the x minus 1. That's E. Y equals 5 to the x minus 1. That's F. Y equals 5 to the 1 minus x. That's G. And y equals 1 minus 5 to the x, and that's H. Okay? So we're just making the table. We chose the x values of -1, 0, and 1, and we're going to plug those x values into all of these different y functions and see which order pair matches the given graph, okay? I think we can do these quickly in our head. Okay. So for A, when x is -1, 5 to the -1 is 1 over 5. So this y value is 1 over 5. And then when x is 0, you get 1 and then 5, okay? Now when x is -1 or positive, so we know it's not A because you can just quickly look at the y values. When x is -1, it should be negative. So that ruled it out right there. When x was 0, we're at +1, so it's definitely not A. Let's just go ahead and plug it into B. All right, so 5 to the -1 is 5 to the 1, which is 5. 5 to the 0 is 1, and 5 to the -1 is 1 by 5. So when x is -1, where it should be at 5, so this doesn't work either. Let's try C. When x is -1. Now, if you have -5 to the -1, you got to do x1 is before multiplication, so that's going to be a -1 by 5. Now, this is a good candidate. It's close, so, let's keep going. And then when x is 0, you get 5 to the 0, which is 1. You get -1. Okay, so we need to figure out what are each of these tick marks. Let me see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So each tick mark is 1. This is a good candidate. This so far, yeah, because when -1 is negative, it's close to 0. Then at 0, it's at -1. Let's look at 1. Now, if we do 5 to the 1, that's 5. So then we get -5. Okay, so when x is 1, we're at -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And actually, this one checks out. Just for completeness, we're going to test the rest of them. So when x is -1, that's 5 to the +1. So that's a -5. And that one you can rule out almost instantly. That's going to be -1. And then -1 by 5. But again, this one doesn't check out because the first one, when x is -1, the answer is not -5. So then the next one, if we try x to the 5 to the -1, that's 1 over 5 minus 1 is a -4/5. -4/5. Now it could be that one because we're kind of eyeballing, but we should be much closer to -1 at that point. But that's okay. When x is 0, That's 1 minus 1 is 0. So notice it does not go through the origin. And then 5 minus 1 is 4. So this one is no good. When x is negative 1, that's 5 to the negative 2. That's 1 over 25. 5 to the negative 1 is 1 over 5. And then 5 to the 0 is 1. This one doesn't check out either. Negative 1, that's 5 squared, so that's going to be 25. And then that's 5. And then that's 1. This doesn't check out. And then negative 1, that's 1/5. So that's 4/5. And then when x is 0, that's 0. And then when x is 1, we're at negative 4. Only one that checked out was C. So then that's what we would choose. C is the only one where the x's match the y's on our graph. So when we plot C, that's the only one that match. So that's why we would choose C. Okay? And so with that, we will end the session here. And for